let's be clear. What's happened here, just stand back. What you have over the past 45 years is the American economy growing by leaps and bounds, most people going absolutely nowhere. I mean, in terms of their actual ability to buy just what they need, their jobs are becoming less secure, and more of the wealth is going to this handful, 660 billionaires who now are controlling more and more of our media and more and monopolizing more and more of our industry. This is the truth. This is what's happening, and this is what we have to stand against.
Hello, and welcome to the PoliticsGirl podcast. I'm your host, Lee McGowan. Let's get into it. In the days following the election, I'm going to have a host of different guests on to give perspectives on what happened and where we go from here. The goal will be to open your mind and best prepare you to manage what's coming for us, and hopefully give you hope and insight on what we can actually do to not succumb to the worst instincts of our new leaders and our own fears. As today's guest, Robert Reich, wrote in his Substack after the election, a lot of people are coping with this election by choosing to minimize or deny the results. There are many people out here who just believe that the second Trump term won't be much different than the first. And as Professor Reich puts it, this is wishful and dangerous thinking. Robert Reich, a graduate of Dartmouth and Oxford and Yale, is a professor of public policy at UC Berkeley, a senior fellow at the Bloom Center for Developing Economies, a man who served in 3 national administrations, including as Secretary of Labor under President Clinton. He is also the author of 18 books, co-creator of the 2017 Netflix documentary Saving Capitalism and the 2013 film Inequality for All, as well as the co-founder of Inequality Media and the Economic Policy Institute. Professor Reich also seems to have a very grounded conceptual idea of what happened in this election, and he won't sugarcoat it for you, which, as uncomfortable as it can feel, is exactly what we need to get our heads around. So without further ado, please welcome my guest, professor, economist, and democratic realist, Robert Reich. Welcome, Professor.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, thank you for coming. As I was saying in the introduction, you were recently writing that a lot of people are coping with this election by kind of minimizing or denying the gravity of what's happened. And they're telling themselves that this is just going to be more of the same, that elections go kind of one way or the other, but we have these checks and balances, and if we don't like it, we'll just change course in 4 years. But in my opinion, and I think it's mirrored in your writing, this is kind of wishful and dangerous thinking. Do you want to expand on that thought for us?
Well, it undoubtedly is wishful and dangerous. I mean, if anybody thinks that we are back where we were in 2016 at the start of the first Trump term, when he didn't really know his way to the bathroom in the White House, when he surrounded himself by people who had a little bit of principle and concern for the Constitution, were more loyal to the United States than to him, well, we're not in that picture anymore. Hello? I mean, look at the people he's nominating. It would be laughable if it weren't so horrific. And he's taken over the Republican Party. The Republican Party is now a bunch of Trumpsters. At least in 2016, 2017, we had a few people of integrity in the Republican Party. Now it's been purged for all intents and purposes. And beyond that, you have a lot of the country radicalized and made into extremists, right-wing extremists who really don't understand or respect what our Constitution stands for and are willing and ready to take out their anger on people they conceive of as elites, cultural elites. I'm not talking about economic elites. I mean, Donald Trump loves economic elites. I'm talking about cultural elites. That's who he has in his entire campaign. He has targeted. And he is now doing more of it. It's not just that some people are coping with this by minimizing, but some people are coping with this by dropping out. They're saying, well, I just can't do it. I can't read a newspaper. I can't watch the news. I can't listen to any podcasts about what's going on. It gets me too upset. So I'm going to put my head into the sand. Well, that's almost as bad as minimizing.
Yeah. I actually said that in our podcast last week, that experts on authoritarian governments and totalitarian governments tell us that they are weakest at the beginning and at the end. And so if you put your head in the sand at the beginning, when you can most make a difference, where you can really get in their way of trying to solidify their power and terrify the people and really just capitulate to them, then it makes it even harder for rolling it back later. So unfortunately, as much as I think a lot of people deserve a rest and a lot of people are truly heartbroken, and when you are grieving, you do need to sort of sit back. Unfortunately, what we have ahead of us, if we want to hold on to any semblance of the rule of law, American democracy, the American experiment, being able to replace your leaders if you don't like them, then it matters what we do now.
Exactly. And I think that the blitzkrieg that he is trying to create, it really is kind of
And explain to people what a blitzkrieg is if they don't know.
Well, it's kind of flooding the zone. It's making it impossible for us to even separate. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of health. Are you kidding me? Matt Gaetz in charge of the Justice Department. I mean, this is Looney Tunes. But you see so much of it all coming at once, and there will be much, much more of it. That kind of flooding is part of the technique of an authoritarian. So what we have to do is, and again, there's a huge temptation. I feel, I can't tell you, half the time I am despairing. Sometimes I'm just depressed. I wake up and I thought, I have this dread, but I'm not alone. You're not alone. I mean, there are tens of millions of Americans, probably the majority, who don't want our democracy to be in a shambles, don't want loony people to be in charge of the government, don't want Donald Trump. Elon Musk in charge of cutting the government and reducing the services available to people. Somebody who has $300 billion and is in charge and owns X. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This is really beyond the worst.
Yeah. He also wants those people to work for him for free.
That's right. He puts up this ad, work for free. I mean, he's making since the election, his net worth, his fortune, his wealth has increased $70 billion since the election because he's playing up Dogecoin, and he's making all kinds of money. And what is he going to do? He and Vivek Ramaswamy, the two billionaires in charge of cutting the government, they're going to propose. Obviously, we know there's no fat to cut except the only, and it's not fat at all. People really, really depend on it. It's the biggest: Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. They're not going to cut national defense.
No, what would that Fox News host do if he didn't have all that money to play around with?
I mean, it would be funny if it
wasn't so depressing. Yeah. And
horrific.
So dangerous. But I think to your point, you said the majority of us don't want this. At the end of the day, we have to remember that when this election numbers come down, it's only going to be about 51% of our voters who voted for this. That's not this giant mandate that they're pretending they have. And I think it does us a disservice to pretend that they just smoked us, because they didn't actually. And once a lot of people who voted for Trump realized the things that people like me and you were saying during the election, this is going to happen. They're coming for Social Security. They're coming for your health care. This is going to be poorly managed. We're not going to, children are going to get sick and die from treatable illnesses that we've had for, vaccines for years. Once they realize that, there will be even more of a percentage of people that don't want this, which goes back to our original point about now is the time where we have to keep drawing attention to what is going wrong, what they're doing wrong, what is up, because this is where we can really be a thorn in their side and really be, as I said in my last pod, the most annoying to them, so that we put everything through the courts, everything we push back on.
That's exactly right. And when they try to come for people in our community who are hardworking people, they say don't have the right papers or undocumented or people in their family, we protect them. When they try to make abortion illegal for everybody, we protect our women and girls. When they go after political opponents of Donald Trump, we protect them. It's not just a resistance. We are fighting. We are fighting for our democracy.
Unfortunately, we are going to be fighting really hard for our democracy. And it's hard because The Republicans appear to now control all branches of the federal government, including their bought and paid for Supreme Court. The only solace I can take right now is that it will be harder for them to blame Democrats for everything that goes wrong, which has always been their move. And based on their ideas, and as you've said, Trump's potential cabinet, the people behind this movement, a lot of things are going to go wrong, right? The problem is what you said before, is that the Republican Party has effectively been purged of anyone who's probably willing to stand up for it and stand up to Trump's worst instincts. He is surrounding himself by the yesiest of yes men, right? The true believers, the zealots, the sadists. And he's clearly working in coordination with many foreign adversaries. So I'm not sure if there's anyone left to protect us at the federal level to stop whoever ends up being in charge of doing it this new way. Because even if it's not Trump, he's really just a figurehead of a far darker organization. So I think this is why we need to start looking at state level pushback, at organizational level resistance, at individuals' choices to not just accept this as right or normal. And I think that's going to be really important moving forward.
Absolutely. In fact, the only silver lining I can find on all of this is that it reveals the power structure and forces us to reclaim power for democracy and for, let's face it. I mean, this is a lot about this is about class. I mean, the bottom 90% of Americans by income. But the median wage of the bottom 90% has not increased, adjusted for inflation, in 52 years. Where did all the money go? It all went to the top. And so, I don't want to get into an arcane discussion about Democrats and the Democratic National Committee and all that stuff.
Oh, no, we're going to talk about them because honestly, they need to completely rebrand. We have to be the party of that 90% because honestly, at the end of the day, it looks like a bunch of people who are in that top 10% hung out with a bunch of people who are in the other top 10% and they all left us out to dry. And now they're like, resist. And you're like, fuck you. I think that's where we are. So I think we need to rebrand.
Well, it's more than rebranding. Branding just suggests that this is the label. I think that the Democratic Party, if it's going to really be there for the future, has got to be the party of working Americans. It's got to be the party of the middle and working class. It's got to be the party of the bottom 90%. It's got to tell the truth about where the money and resources have gone over the last 50 years. It's got to take on big corporations and the wealthy like Elon Musk. It's got to really stand for dramatically increasing taxes on the top, using that money to provide, for example, paid child and medical care and sick leave and give people what they need and what they deserve, what every other middle and working class and every other modern economy has. This is not rocket science, if you excuse the expression, SpaceX Elon. This is about really power, and we have to organize and mobilize. There are a lot of good groups around. Now, you're right. There are some states. I happen to be sitting here in the state of California. I am going to do even more than I was doing before to urge and move and demand that California preserve and protect and expand upon its environmental safety, all the other things that California does well. And some of the things I want to reverse some of the things that California does miserably on. But it's also communities. It's at the community level. I was talking with a mayor of one of our California cities just about an hour ago, and she has all kinds of things she wants to do. And I'm encouraged. I feel hopeful when I talk to these people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, based on your writing, it seems that you believe that the real lesson of the 2024 election is despite the fact that Joe Biden was making these big moves to take the Democratic Party back towards being the party of the working class, really supporting the unions, walking the picket line with them, talking about paid family leave. He tried to put that into his very first Build Back Better bill, right? Building new factories using the CHIPS Act, delivering infrastructure and jobs. We just didn't sell it well enough. I mean, you're talking about telling a better story. We just didn't deliver on the things we were starting to talk about. And I think that we have to understand why it's been bad for decades, why our jobs are less secure, why things have been going badly. We need to tell that story in a way people can take in, because our problems are not what the Republicans say. Our problems are not because of immigrants or liberals or people of color or the gay community. It is not the trans community, right? It's not the deep state that caused these problems. This is a rigged economic system that has been going on for years, where the very rich have gotten richer for 50 years and the rest of us haven't seen any of that. And maybe
Yes.
that's a story that's easier to tell when we're out of power, when we can see it happening right in front of our eyes, when we really are no longer the establishment, that maybe we can say, hey, we're going to represent the 90% because we're totally out of power. And so are they, And so we're all going to work together to find our way back to something that works for all of us.
Well, from your lips to God's ears. I hope that's right. To the DNC's ears, if not God's ears. But look at the point is right now, the Democrats, progressives, people who care about social justice, people who are really, most people in this country want democracy. The problem is that the Democratic Party right now is in the midst of its usual kind of psychobabble. Do we move to the center, or do we move left, or do we want to just hold on to the status quo, or do we want to get even more billionaires on our side? And I think that, somebody like Rahm Emanuel is being considered for the DNC chair. I mean, what the worst possible candidate if you want to actually move the Democratic National Committee to be a party of the working people instead of the party of the billionaires.
No. Absolutely not. It cannot be Rahm Emanuel. It has to be someone like Ben Wickler, who completely remade the Democratic Party in Wisconsin after they had been shut out of democracy. Someone that understands the people and works really hard alongside them, and is not some, super rich guy himself. He's just a hardworking American who believes in human rights and human decency, and, everyone has a chance to succeed.
Exactly, and also you get out of this red state versus blue state mentality. I mean,
Right.
the fact of the matter is that in the last election, you had the state of Missouri do some extraordinary things. I mean, unfortunately they voted for Trump, but they also voted to increase the minimum wage. Nebraska, of all places, red state Nebraska voted for Trump, but also at the same time voted for paid sick leave.
And almost won the Senate seat for that independent worker.
He came very close, and it was on an economic populist platform, exactly what we're talking about. So instead of moving to the flabby middle center nothing, the status quo, what the Democratic Party has got to do if it wants to be part of the future is it's got to become the party of the bottom 90%. It's got to stand up for the little guy. It's got to name names. It's got to point fingers at wealthy people and corporations. It's got to stop the corruption. Corruption. I want to use that word corruption because it's legalized bribery, big money in politics. That's the heart and soul of the problem.
My mother-in-law just came to visit to see my son's show. And while she was here, she was venting her frustrations about her hearing aids, the ones she got through Costco. So we gave her a pair of MD hearing aids, and so far, she's really liking them. Millions of adults over 65 experience hearing loss. So if you or someone you love is in that group, trust me, you're not alone. It's such a common experience. But thankfully, there's real help out there that won't break the bank. This podcast is sponsored by MD Hearing, which provides FDA-registered rechargeable hearing aids at a fraction of the cost of traditional hearing aids. Their Neo model is priced at over 90% less than clinical hearing aids, which is a game changer. 90% less? And MD Hearing just introduced their new Neo Extra Small, or Neo XS. Their smallest model ever, so it's practically invisible once it's in your ear. The price of these hearing aids was just cut in half, so right now you can get a pair of these high-quality, rechargeable hearing aids for only $297. I don't know how to beat that kind of a value. My mother-in-law's Costco ones were over $1,200, and she doesn't even like them. MD Hearing was actually founded by an ENT surgeon who saw just how many of his patients needed hearing aids but couldn't afford them. So he made it his mission to develop a quality, affordable hearing aid. And now, MD Hearing has sold over 1.9 million of them. Plus, they're offering a 45-day risk-free trial with a 100% money-back guarantee, so you can feel confident in giving them a try. Here's the thing, expensive doesn't always mean best. In fact, I have read from several users that MD hearing aids are the best ones they've used at any price. Simple to use, durable, and best of all, the hearing aids cost less than 10 times as much. If you are still on the fence, please know that MD Hearing was just selected as the hearing aid supplier for top Medicare Advantage plans, so this is a brand you can trust. This holiday season, get your hearing you deserve with MD Hearing. Go to shopmdhearing.com and use the promo code PoliticsGirl to get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. Plus, they're adding a free extra charging case, a $100 value, just for listeners of PoliticsGirl. That's shopmdhearing.com and use our promo code PoliticsGirl to get a pair of hearing aids for just $297. So I've been getting way more conscious of how much of my personal data is out there. Over the last decade, the US has seen a steady growth in politically motivated, threatening online behavior, peaking around the election cycles with 3 in 4 voters reporting fearing political violence. Now, more than ever, privacy feels less like a luxury and more like a necessity. You can't always control if you're a target, but you can make it harder for politically motivated threats to escalate by taking a proactive approach to the security of your personal information. As someone who shares my opinions publicly, I am hyper aware of this need for safety and security. Our personal data just floats around in the internet, and it's more accessible than ever, which has real-world implications, which is why I am personally using DeleteMe, a subscription service that removes your private information from hundreds of data brokers. DeleteMe is as thorough as it gets with online privacy. Once you sign up, you can tell them exactly what information you want removed, and their team of experts handle the rest. They even send you regular privacy reports, showing you what information they found, where it was, and what they've removed. And it's not just a one-time fix. DeleteMe constantly monitors and removes your data that you don't want to have online. It's like having a personal privacy guard that's always on duty. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for DeleteMe. Now, at a special discount for our listeners, you can get 20% off your DeleteMe plan by texting PoliticsGirl to 64,000. Text PoliticsGirl to 64000. That's PoliticsGirl to 64,000.
Big money in politics. That's the heart and soul of the problem.
Yeah. And I think that's also what's sort of breaking people's hearts right now, right? That we've just hired a man who is part of the problem, who is all corruption all the time, right? And he is surrounding himself with absolute true loyalists. He's got the power of the pardon. He's got approved criminal immunity. You know, according to the Supreme Court's last session, bribery is legal if you do it after the fact, right? It just, the whole thing feels like a criminal's dream. And that's what we're getting. We're getting a bunch of criminals. And I don't think there's any reason for our allies around the world to trust us anymore. I think it's going to make us incredibly isolated. You know, I found myself thinking, what is happening to me? Like John Thune won to be the majority leader of the Senate for the Republicans. And I thought, well, that's a win. You know, and I thought, when would I have ever said that Mitch McConnell's acolyte, being head of the Senate was a win? And yet
at least it wasn't Rick Scott.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a win, John Thune. But you see, don't belittle yourself or be angry with yourself, because we do have to take all of these little tiny marginal wins. The fact is that Trump doesn't have as much control over Senate Republicans as he thought he did. And that's good. Now, what he's going to try to do next is he's going to try to get John Thune to just give him the possibility of making all these recess appointments. Trump is saying to John Thune, what I want you to do, starting January 3rd, you call the Senate in session, and then you put it in recess, so Donald Trump, can just get all my people through without any confirmation hearings, without any problems at all. It'll all be automatic, and Thune, you're on my team. And now what we want to do is make sure that John Thune feels some responsibility to the nation, to the Constitution, and that other Republican senators feel that way too. They're not going to be a rubber stamp for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I feel like they've all forgotten that this is supposed to be 3 co-equal branches. Their job is to be the check on the executive branch. They are not supposed to just say, well, I heard a Republican senator the other day saying, well, he won the mandate, so we'll do whatever he wants. And I was like, that's not your job, bro. Your job is to advise and confirm his nominees. So if he's putting up someone like Matt Gaetz for attorney general, someone who is just about to have his own congressional hearing about his own criminal enterprise, that's not the right person to make in charge of all of our laws in this country. If he's putting up someone like Tulsi Gabbard in charge of national security when she's clearly corrupted by foreign adversaries, that's not the right person. It's about letting the foxes run the hen house. And there have to be enough people there that say, this is dangerous for the people of my state, for the people of this country, and I can't rubber stamp it.
Exactly. In other words, it all comes down to the question, are you more loyal to Donald Trump or to the United States and the Constitution of the United States? Which is your loyalty? Where does your loyalty run? That is going to be the fundamental question. And for those Republicans, we've talked about the Democrats, for those Republicans that really feel like or act as if their loyalty is to Donald Trump, we're going to make sure that in 2026, the midterms, that is some of them, many of them are going to be up in the midterms, and as soon as possible, they are going to be out of there. And Americans are going to know that these people are more loyal to Donald Trump than to the United States.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough sell for people, honestly. I think it's a tough thing to take in. I think we've all seen the spinelessness of the Republicans moving through the past 10 years. I think it's going to be hard to picture them suddenly growing a spine, but it might be so close. I think that what we go back to, you said, don't shortchange myself. It is actually true. Donald Trump wanted Rick Scott because Rick Scott was a rubber stamp. And the senators themselves chose John Thune. And so that says something about their absolute blind loyalty to Donald Trump. However, John Thune was just on television saying he's not going to write off having confirmations during the recess, but at least they've already taken one step to say not exactly what you want, sir. But I think the whole thing feels like a test, right? If Trump can get 51 votes for Gaetz, then he can kind of do anything he wants, right? It's a loyalty test is what we're watching.
Exactly. And you have people like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski who are, the last bastions, and maybe Tillis, the last bastions of integrity in the Republican Senate. And we have to protect them and support them because they are vulnerable. I mean, I'm not sure how vulnerable, but you can bet that if they don't pass and they are not passing Trump's loyalty test, Trump is going to do everything he can to make sure they're out of there.
Yeah. I think the thing is that people are struggling. And let me know what you think about this, because honestly, we look at what's coming ahead of us and it feels so overwhelming, right? Like, are we really just going to let these people take over our education and close the Department of Education and all the people that will hurt? Are we really going to let someone like RFK Jr. take over our public health? Donald Trump's already told us to expect mass deportations. They put Stephen Miller in charge of policy. They're already building camps. They want to prosecute their personal enemies, their political enemies. He already has a list we all know of. They want to remove the pre-existing clauses of the ACA. Mike Johnson already revealed they were going to do that at a press conference. Trump wants to use the military against U.S. citizens, and he's promised to try and replace a bunch of the generals in order to do that, right? They're talking about withholding federal aid from states that don't kiss the ring. And he said during the campaign that California, where we both live, if it's on fire, he's not helping unless they do what he wants. It's basically blackmail against the states. So I think people are justifiably scared. And it's also not how federalism is supposed to work. I keep thinking oh my God, not enough people understand how the government works. And I knew that to begin with. I wrote a book on it, right? This is how the government works and this is where we went off track. But it's amazing to me how many people think, well, he can't just do that. And I'm like, well, he can if he goes forward the way we're going right now, which is kind of it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Not only can he
will.
He will. In fact, he's on the track already. He's on the road. We are on the road to authoritarianism, if not worse. And let's look at this objectively and realistically, not with fear in our hearts, not with depression or just rejection. Let's just look at it and say, what are our levers? Now, we've talked about the states and the community, the state that are still democratic states, and the communities, and the communities and the moment, the kind of green shoots in the red states. I referred to Missouri and Nebraska just a moment ago. There are a lot of green shoots in red states, and there are a lot of wonderful organizations around that have been working like indivisible for years. The ACLU, my little nonprofit, Inequality Media, and we have to protect and support all of these groups and join them and be activists. We'll take every win. That's the point. Every small win, every sign that there is still integrity and principle, and there's still people who care about our Constitution and democracy. We will take it, and we will take it as encouragement.
Yeah.
And we will be fighting. Now, when I say fighting, I don't mean we're going to be fighting violently or with, I think it would be awful to use, any kind of weapons. I mean, that would give Trump and his minions at the Justice Department and in the Army, an excuse to really use firepower. No. We use civil disobedience. We use nonviolence. We organize, we mobilize in our communities, and we organize to protect and preserve the people who deserve protection and the institutions, the most important institutions that deserve to be protected.
Yeah. And we support the people that are taking the hits. We
Absolutely.
support, the blue state governors that are standing up and speaking out. We support the organizations that are working on the ground. We support somebody who takes a vote and votes for human rights, for civil liberties, for that kind of thing. We say, we support you, we see you, we support you. Instead of being heartbroken that it didn't go our way, we support the people that really were still out there fighting for us. I think that's the only way it grows. And we have to keep reminding people where they're taking shortcuts with our democracy, why people are suffering, what is going on. If, people's children start dying of pertussis again, you know what I mean? We have to say that is because this, we are heartbroken for you. We stand with you, but we really do need, vaccines were here for a reason. I would love to warn them before it happens. So they're so afraid that they're afraid to do it to us, to get rid of all of our vaccines.
Exactly. And when it comes to the media, I mean, we do have a real problem. We've got, the X, that used to be Twitter, owned by, Elon Musk, who has turned it into a swampland of disinformation and weaponized it in really distorting and grotesque ways. We've got the old, Fox News and the other kind of right-wing media that are just, they have no principles, no compunctions about lying. They're now just lying away. So we have got to help people understand where they can get accurate and useful and honest information and analysis. And that's very, very important. People don't, even people of goodwill can't do what they need to do if they don't know the facts.
Yeah, no, it's impossible. It's infinitely harder to do any of this work with so much propaganda and lies out here. And I don't think that means that we need to start lying ourselves. I really do think this whole concept of fighting fire with fire, I don't think that's the case. I think we need to build a break wall of sorts that will stop the fire, that will allow us to tell the truth, that will remind people what truth is, why it matters if you look things up, why you shouldn't just share something unless you've checked it, why you should check your sources. We need way more media literacy. I know that a lot of people agree with your personal assessment that we need to cultivate an equivalent media ecosystem to what the right has built, because clearly they have. But as we're saying, not to spread our own lies and bigotry, but to pitch a message of an alternative, of a better world, of a fairer world, of a kinder world. And honestly, we're speaking to 90% of the country. So that should start to work, provided we don't silence ourselves ahead of time in order to capitulate to the leader. I don't know about you, but these days I have a hard time turning my brain off. What's going on right now is making winding down feel impossible at the end of the day, which is where Calm comes in. I've been using Calm for years because, shocker, I'm an overthinker. But these days, I don't even know what to do with myself. I'm using Calm with the sleep stories every night and the nap meditations midday when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I just need a 20-minute refresher. I use their Brownian noise to work. I am just so grateful that Calm exists and it's right there on my phone. In case you don't know, Calm is the #1 app for sleep and meditation, giving you the power to calm your mind and genuinely change your life. The people at Calm understand that mental health isn't one size fits all, so they offer a wide range of content that fits different needs. Whether it's meditations for working through anxiety and building healthier habits, or sleep stories and calming music to help you drift off at night, Calm's got something for you. Calm also has expert-led talks on topics like handling grief, improving self-esteem, and managing your relationships. So there's really something for anything that life might throw in your way. So stress less, sleep more, and live better with Calm. For listeners of our show, Calm is offering an exclusive offer of 40% off a Calm premium subscription at calm.com/politicsgirl. So go to calm.com/politicsgirl for 40% off unlimited access to Calm's entire library. That's calm.com/politicsgirl. I'm telling you, I use it every day. I'll be honest, meal kits have not always been my thing. I have tried some that just did not deliver on the taste, or the assembly was so epic that I was over the meal before I even got to eat it. But Marley Spoon is completely different. With everything that's going on, the election, my family, my work, finding time to plan and shop and cook for my family feels impossible. But we need quality food and we need time to eat together. And Marley Spoon literally makes that possible. We get these delicious meals without the hassle of thinking about them or shopping for them. Marley Spoon has over 100 recipes to choose from every week. Last week, our family had sheet pan pepperoni pizza with hot honey and a Caesar salad with crispy panko, Greek-inspired chicken gyros, and shrimp tacos with fresh salsa and sour cream. Every single meal was good, like really good, not tolerable good, like damn, that's yummy good. The variety is wild. There is no way you won't find something you'll like there, and it's all customizable. You want it to be vegetarian, family-friendly, low-carb, they've got you covered. And they even have an in-house registered dietitian to make sure you're eating healthy without the guesswork. And for the holiday season, Marley Spoon has got special festive meals like Thanksgiving glazed country ham, scalloped potatoes, apple and sage stuffing, or holiday breakfast waffles and candied bacon. You can even try recipes inspired by Martha Stewart's 100th cookbook, since Marley Spoon is the only meal prep plan with Martha's stamp of approval. This holiday season, give the gift of great personalized food with Marley Spoon. Head to marleyspoon.com/offer/politicsgirl and use the code politicsgirl for up to 27 free meals. That's right, up to 27 free meals with Marley Spoon. One last time, that is MARLEY spoon.com/offer/politicsgirl for up to 27 free meals, and make sure you use my promo code politicsgirl so they know that I sent you. And honestly, we're speaking to 90% of the country, so that should start to work, provided we don't silence ourselves ahead of time in order to capitulate to the leader.
Yes, and we should know, I mean, when Jeff Bezos doesn't let the Washington Post come out, the editorially in support of Kamala Harris, that is such a fundamental violation of what should be the wall between big money and public access to information and analysis and news. Those are abuses of wealth and power. They would be called out as abuses of wealth and power. The Washington Post newsroom needs support, but we also need to make sure that Bezos is the second richest man in the world. Let's be clear what's happened here. Just stand back. What you have over the past 45 years is the American economy growing by leaps and bounds, most people going absolutely nowhere. I mean, in terms of their actual ability to buy just what they need, their jobs are becoming less secure, and more of the wealth is going to this handful, 660 billionaires, who now are controlling more and more of our media and more and monopolizing more and more of our industry. This is the truth. This is what's happening, and this is what we have to stand against.
Yeah. It's frustrating, right? Because it feels like that old expression, a lie can circle the globe faster than, the truth can put on its shoes. It's just like, if you look at the post-election roundup, it seems that the electorate is filled with people who are saying things like, well, I voted for Trump because I didn't want to lose my abortion rights, or I voted for him because I want help buying a house, or tariffs are going to make everything cheaper. And I feel like, oh dear, no, that's the opposite of that. And how can that many people not know this? And how do we convince them other than watching the suffering happening and keeping people informed. It's a very hard environment to work in because, like you said, we need to keep X accountable. We need to file more defamation lawsuits. We need to punish people who are, advertising on these places that lie to us. I sat on CNN so much before the election just trying to counter lies, and they do it so beautifully and seamlessly. It's almost shocking to watch because they know they're lying, but they say it because it serves them and without any recognition for how it will hurt the people. And I found it hard to watch, and it's quite tough to counter.
It's very hard. I mean, I don't want to be a Pollyanna about any of this. In fact, if anything, what we're talking about is some of the toughest things to actually grapple with. But let me just say that all of this puts us back to basics in the sense that basically, what do we want in terms of the democracy we live in? What are the most essential aspects of this democracy? How do we get big money out of the corruption business that is just taking more and more of the wealth of the country for itself? How do we get rid of the oligarchy that we have? And it is an oligarchy. How do we actually get the truth? How do we engage civic action? And how do we teach our kids about civics? This is an opportunity. It's not just a darkness. I mean, out of darkness comes light. In my most Pollyannish moments, I say to myself, well, I'm crushed that Kamala Harris did not win. I am absolutely infuriated and depressed. But if her administration had been a kind of milquetoast, centrist let's have the billionaires, let's lower taxes on the billionaire kind of administration, like so many Democratic administrations have been, I would have been even more depressed.
And we'd be right back here.
Yes.
I mean, eventually
exactly.
We were going to come here. In a lot of ways, I say that America is such a young nation that, 248 years, we're having our first, our second, really, if you think about the Civil War, but our first, big come to Jesus moment. We're like, are we going to make it or not? And this is up to us. Like you're saying, this is an opportunity. I mean, this is going to be worse than we can imagine. It's worse than we've had before. I don't think we can look away. I don't think we can minimize it. I mean, like we were saying, Robert F. Kennedy in charge of our health. Good Lord, right? But we also can't give up. It doesn't sort of matter how demoralizing it feels right now. You're talking about fighting back. And I think that's really essential. I was looking at some of your reading and you were saying things like, we have to protect those who are in harm's way. We have to organize and we have to mobilize politically. We have to resist with civil disobedience. We obviously have to support the people who are standing up for our rights. And we have to monitor this government. We have to call attention to the things that they're doing. Like I said, we need to be the biggest thorn in their side. We have to be the most annoying people that there ever could be. That they say, we're going to come in and do this. And we're saying, no, I don't think you will. Actually, we're going to sue you. Actually, we're going to do this. Actually, we're going to stand in the way of your things coming through here. We have to be those people, that kind of civil disobedience. I keep thinking of teenagers. And when you have a teenager and you tell them, you're grounded, and they say, all right, and they go to their room. And you see parents all the time being like, what if they said no, right? Like, what would we do to stop them, from going out? I think that's kind of the vibe we have to have, a little bit like, we're here to do this. And we say, no, I don't think you will. And then we fight them in courts.
Exactly.
We fight them in states. We fight them until we get to the 2026 election. And there's part of me that's like, the only good thing about the idea that if people really don't think that there was, I still think that there's something sus with the way the elections turned out. It feels very 2004 Ukraine, very Belarusian, the way the results came out. I think it should be audited just for this peace of mind, even if it changes not a single vote. I would love to see it audited just so people can take that idea off the shelf. But if you do say, okay, this is really the election, this is really what people wanted, it means our elections still work, which means that by 2026, we could have a different result. If you think this election was just stolen, then it's going to be tougher because, as you can see, Putin's still getting 88% of the vote in every election. And we know that's not happening. We have to make sure we don't get there.
Exactly. Well, I think that people have more power than a lot of people feel they have right now. I mean, look at the power of boycotting. I mean, just get off X. and don't buy Teslas and don't give any more money to Elon Musk. And what about wildcat strikes? I mean, wildcat strikes where you just say no.
What's a
I'm not going to.
wildcat strike? Why don't I know what a wildcat strike
A
is?
wildcat strike is a strike that occurs when workers who are not in a union just simply decide that they are not going to work. This is what happened in Kentucky and Tennessee and a whole bunch of states about 5 years ago with teachers who did not have the right to strike, but they all struck. And lo and behold, the governors in these red states, they didn't know what to do because there was nobody to negotiate with. They realized suddenly that they needed teachers' unions because they needed people to negotiate with.
They had no one to talk to.
That is what they're talking about. So wildcat strikes are really disruptive and can be disruptive in a very positive way. We also have the ability to stop a lot of bad stuff that is likely to go down. But we have to feel our power. We've got to understand that we have agency. And one of the most sort of the oldest authoritarian playbook moves is to make us hopeless.
Yeah.
To take hope away, to make us supine and tractable and just feel like we just buried under cynicism. Well, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that.
Yeah. And it also just drives them crazy. I was talking to a Ukrainian friend of mine and she was like, yeah, you're looking at like a puppet government now and it's going to be like this and the authority. And I was like, why are you talking in such a calm way? You're making me frantic that you're being so calm. And she was like, this is how the world works. You guys just haven't done it yet. She's like, look at Ukrainians. They've been doing this to us for years. We still have our Christmas parties. We've got all this joy. And then they come for us and we're like, absolutely not, double middle finger, right? Like that's the attitude that Americans have to have. And I feel like, all right, I mean, I don't want to. I want to go back to bed and I'm pissed off at everybody. But at the end of the day, this isn't how we're going to fix it. It has to be fixed by saying like, no, we're going to be super annoying and very Ukrainian about this and have our parties and enjoy ourselves and then show up and get in your way every single day until it sort of becomes too irritating. And then we get to another election and we tell you how we feel.
Exactly. That's it.
And use capitalism to your advantage, people. Money got us here. Money can play a major part in getting us out. They need us buying their stuff.
Damn right. The point I think we're talking about here, we have not in the United States, most of us have not experienced fascism.
No.
We've not experienced dictatorship, tyranny. We don't know what it's like. We are easily persuaded that it could never happen here, as Sinclair Lewis wrote about. But it can happen here, and it's on its way. And we have got to see it, understand it, stand up to it, and not just resist, but fight it.
Yeah. Total repudiation is what has to happen. And we need to encourage the people that are in positions of power to keep fighting because we have their back.
And the Democratic Party, hello, I'm going to say this one more time. Don't just move to the center and try to get more money and turn your back as you've turned your back before on the working class and the middle class and work about and worry as you've only worried before about the suburban swing voters. No. Become the party of the people.
Yeah. Every single person that wants human rights and civil rights and women's rights that lives in South Dakota. Talk to the people who live in Mississippi who feel that they've been ignored for generations. Speak up for the people. Forget about blue and red states. Forget about who's in the party, who's out of the party. Talk to the people. And I think we're going to have to completely reimagine how we did it. And that's going to be a lot of work, but it seems like it might be totally worth it. And it might be an unstoppable force because 90 versus 10% that's big winner.
It's unstoppable.
It's
unstoppable.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Robert. I mean, you ended your Substack this week, one of them by saying it will be up to us, the American people, those who still cherish democracy, to be doing this.
We are, to use the old phrase from the civil rights movement, we are the leaders whom we've been waiting for.
Well, as difficult as that is to kind of accept, I think the first step is to acknowledge where we are. It's a little bit like being in AA. You have to first admit there's a problem. And I think we can all see now exactly where we are. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? So thank you so much. Please tell people how they can continue to follow your work through these times and help Inequality Media and help the things you're doing to keep people actually informed.
Yes, Inequality Media. I mean, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on every platform. And I have a Substack, just Robert Reich. And I have books. And I've been doing this for, 100 years at least. So there are a lot of books. Somebody asked me recently, do you ever get discouraged? And I took it as a more profound question than I think it was asked, because I've been at this so fucking long that it is easy to get discouraged, but you can't go in that direction. I mean, what is life worth if you're discouraged about something that is so fundamentally important?
Yeah. Where does it lead? As someone who has been given a terminal diagnosis for a disease, and as someone who lost her mother very suddenly and watched her die right in front of me, I know the feeling of grief. I know that feeling where you have no power over what's happened to you. You have no power of what's going to happen to you moving forward. You just have to kind of accept it. And once you go through all those stages, you're kind of left with two choices. And I was saying this last week, your choices are kind of to lie down and die or stand up and fight back. And every single time I can say it is more rewarding to stand up and fight back. And I think that's exactly what we need to do now, as painful and horrible as it is. This is where we sit, and this is what it is. And what we do from here is up to us. And in many ways, that's actually quite empowering.
Absolutely.
So that was Robert Reich reminding us not to get buried under cynicism. That the truth is, the bottom 90% of this country has been ignored for 50 years. And while Trump spoke to them and swayed them, he won't help them. So this is not only the time for us to use every lever of power to stop the worst of authoritarianism from overtaking our country, to stand behind the people and organizations who will be out here fighting for its integrity, its principles, our freedoms, but to use this destruction of what we know as an opportunity to build something new, something better, something that includes all of us. We need to start imagining that story. And then when we feel ready, we have to start telling it. I want to thank Robert Reich for joining us today, and you for caring enough about the future of this country to be here. This might be our immediate future, but it won't be our children's. So choose to fight for every little win until it becomes one big win. Because the idea of American democracy is simply too important to abandon. Until next week. PG out. Before you go, I just want to say, if you're a premium member of this podcast or you joined last week, thank you so much. And if you're not, please consider supporting my work. The mainstream media has let us down. And even though I will continue to go on it and speak the truth as long as they allow me, now more than ever, it is essential that we support those doing this kind of work, independent work. As we said in this podcast, the right-wing media ecosystem has been so effective, and we need to fight back against it. Truth really does exist, and we're in this position now because people just did not have enough access to it. Our side did not invest in the counter-messaging that we needed to, but we need to fix that. So if you aren't a member of PoliticsGirl Premium, please consider going to PoliticsGirl.com and signing up. I can't continue this now dangerous work without your help. The beauty of signing up to support me is that you will get this podcast ad-free along with all of my short rants sent directly to your inbox. So even if my work is silenced on social media, you will still have access to the truth. There is a link to sign up in the bio of this episode, but also on PoliticsGirl.com. Thank you so much for your time and support. Onward, my friends. Goodness still exists in this world, and we simply can't forget it.